Welcome to Times Now.in Education Summit 2025, and we've been joined by a very special guest today on the podcast, Harini Ravi, Director, SRM Group of Institutions. Thank you so much, Harini, for speaking to us here at Times Now.in Education Summit 2025. My first question would be, what motivated you to step into an active leadership role within the SRM Group of Institutions, and what purpose drive your work in education space today?
I think it was a natural step for me to get into the family business because one thing is certain, every child, grandchild would definitely want to step into their family business and add value to a legacy that has been the result of their grandparents and parents' hard work, vision, and dedication. So I think it is high time that I add my own, I would say, my own vision to the work that we do there. And one thing that really drives me while I work in education is the purpose. Why do people value education? And for me, it's always been about emancipation. I think education is synonymous with emancipation and the goal of upward social mobility. And a lot of Indian students have this dream that if they work hard, study hard, and derive value from the degrees that they're pursuing in an education institution, that they would definitely be guaranteed some sort of upward social mobility, positions of power or job security, or maybe even a happier life. So I think that goal is something that people like me should not take for granted, should value it, and should strive our best to ensure that it comes into fruition. So I think that is very important, that humility and knowing what is important.
Well, absolutely. And as someone who's bringing a fresh perspective to the higher education ecosystem, what earlier insights have shaped how you think about student needs and institution growth, perhaps?
Yes, I would go back to one of the first times I had any sort of educated input to what we were doing, and this was back when I was doing my postgraduate in the UK, and this was COVID era, mind you. So that was a very emotionally, physically, and mentally exhausting time. And one thing worried me, which was how are we in SRM group servicing the needs of the students in this terrible time. So as a student, I used to question how are we implementing the emergency remote learning system, and how are the multimodal education processes that we were implementing being received by the students. So these were questions that led me to sort of come to this conclusion that yes, this is what I want to keep doing. This is the purpose behind why we do what we do, to constantly worry about what the future of our institution is going to be, and what impact it can have on students' lives. And for me, I would say that students in India are quite stratified. There are a lot of social groups and economic groups that we have to cater to, and every single one of them is going to have their own economic or social disadvantages. And those with higher economic and social capital are always going to be ahead of the race. And this is where we need to, I guess, make up for that difference by ensuring that each student has an equitable learning experience. So yes.
Like this point you made, the gap between the readiness and the what the institutions believe, it's very important. It's a very important point. And from that point, I'm coming to my next question, which is one widely discussed concern is the gap between education and real world readiness in India. Like you mentioned some of the points regarding it. What do you see as one pressing challenge in India's education system today, and how can institutions begin addressing it? You talked some about it, but we want to know your views on it.
Of course. I could say that a 4-year degree or a 3-year degree could do wonders to change students' lives, but I would be wrong, because ultimately, from my experience, it's always been about the foundation. What do schools do for young students to prepare them for a life of higher education and even employment? And a lot of students who have attended historically advantaged schools with a lot of economic capital, schools with connections, and schools with English speaking teachers. There are these students who are so advantaged in so many ways that when they go to college or university, it's a pretty easy transition compared to students from say marginalized communities or disenfranchised and disadvantaged social groups. And these students who are well behind the race, they end up having to make up for that lack of say training, encouragement, and communication skills training, and this sort of understanding that rote learning is not the way to go, that you have to understand what you're studying and bring your own perspectives to the discussion. These are things that you can see in certain students that you can't see in students who are disadvantaged, right? So that is where, when you look at unemployment as a whole, that is where that foundation is lacking for so many students. And then they come to higher education institutions, and we have to give them that training, soft skills training, how to be confident, how to be self-assured, how to ask the right questions, how to ask any question. Like, these are basic skills that they have not been taught, that we have to make up for it. So I would really give it to schools to set up a system that is equitable.
Absolutely, the foundation is perhaps the most important part, as you mentioned. Now, this brings me to the next question. Higher education often requires strong foundations, as you mentioned, and which is perhaps the need of the hour, which needs to be addressed at the core level and the policy level as well. And that also requires constant evolution in so many aspects. How do you approach maintaining academic values while encouraging innovation across your institutions?
Absolutely. See, innovation, I don't think of innovation just in terms of technological innovation. Because let's be honest here, there's this whole trend of this Silicon Valley solutionism going on around, and we don't need more technological solutions to basic political, social, and systemic challenges. And these are complex problems that require meticulous, political, social, and systemic policies to address these issues. And technology can definitely serve as a bridge, and innovation in education can use technological tools to reach students who may not be able to afford that in-person education. There are these online modes that certainly help a lot of students. But true innovation, I would say, is understanding industry say micro changes, having a keen ear on what is happening, and involving curriculum workers to interact with industry professionals, and bring in professors of practice, bring out more faculty industry immersion programs and faculty development programs, and train faculty in general to understand what is trending in industry, so that when all the stakeholders are on the same lines of, okay, fine, yeah, so this is what's happening in industry and these are the changes that is going on, so we need to bring those changes to the curriculum so that students can derive practical benefit from it and actually add value to the workplace, and get value from the degree itself. So I think these are like very basic things that institutions need to do. It doesn't always have to be about technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, this brings me to the final question for today. If you look at the next decade or so, what is your vision for the SRM Group of Institutions, and how do you see contributing to this landscape of higher education in India?
So I don't think in terms of long-term achievable goals, because I think that would leave space for people to lose sight of what they can do at the moment. And my short-term achievable goals are, I really think we can do away with this whole concept of learnification. Learnification is a term that was introduced by Gerd Piesta, who's a sociologist and a education philosopher. According to him, learnification is this idea that education has been sort of boiled down, reduced to learning. The idea of learning, the measurement of learning, the assessment of learning, the datafication of learning. So we don't need this much attention on learning. Education as a whole should be about, say, human flourishing and teacher-student relationships, exploring perspectives and ideas in an institution that is, say, conducive to growth. And learning should be a sort of byproduct, from a student's interaction with the materials that they are taught. And there's this trend of institutions moving towards learning management systems, and I did try out a couple of LMS platforms, and from the research that I've done, the literature that I've read, I've come to understand that there's this huge problem of datafication of learnification, and it essentially reduces students to data points and measures what they learn, and quantifies it, and assesses it for the goal of optimizing it. And we shouldn't be reducing students' performance to numbers, and we shouldn't even be treating it as a legitimate form of student growth. That everything has to be more nuanced than that, and it all boils down to that teacher-student relationship.
Absolutely.
And that experience, that whole experience of college, of university. And as long as we update the curriculum, we involve a lot of industry individuals into our curriculum making, and we send out our faculty members to be trained at various industries, and if we work on our infrastructure, and most importantly, the student experience. Like, we really should be valuing what hostel students go through on a day-to-day basis, and we should be thinking about how students travel 2 to 3 hours a day. I would say 4 to 5 hours a day if you count back and forth. And we should be thinking about all these little experiences that students have, and work towards improving student needs. And so I've recently introduced this whole student support system where students can have, say, 24/7 help whenever they require on any matters. And there's obviously a psychologist available if students want to talk to anyone. And I've had every single faculty member sign a pledge that they would protect LGBTQ rights. And I've made it mandatory for students to have a non-credit gender equality course and financial empowerment for women. So these were small steps that I've taken that hopefully adds to the larger picture that we have. And yeah, so I guess it's a small steps. It's not a large scale vision.
Harini Ravi, thank you so much for this very insightful conversation, and definitely indeed you have great ideas, and we hope the face of the institute, we hope that young face like you perhaps brings in the change that the kind of ideas you have. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you for having me.